Two girls went to the store on scooters to buy themselves sweets. But this harmless walk turned into real tragedy, the details of which can shock anyone. Over the years, there have been many unexpected twists and turns in this case, some of which are very hard to believe. And the ending of this story was quite unexpected. Mikaela Garecht was born on January 24, 1979 in Oaklent, California. For her parents, she was the long-awaited firstborn. Soon, her parents had two more children, and the family decided to move to a suburb called Hayward. Michaela was an ordinary cheerful child. She loved to play with her brother and sister, as well as spend time with her best friend, Katrina. The girls lived almost opposite, so they constantly visited each other and walked near their houses. On November 19, 1988, when Michaela was 9, he and Katrina were running between their homes trying on different outfits, choosing something suitable for an upcoming performance at their school. They were both in high spirits, as it was the first day of the Thanksgiving holidays. At about 10 a.m., Katrina's father gave her $5 so she could buy some sweets. The happy girl ran home to Michaela to ask her mother to go to the nearest store, which was less than a kilometer away. However, the woman was in no hurry to let her daughter go. Both girls were in their late 9s, and they had never gone to the store alone until that moment. They had been there many times, but always accompanied by relatives or older girls from the neighborhood. Michaela continued to coax her, and eventually the woman gave in. She allowed her to go there on the condition that the girls buy some sweets and go straight home. Michaela's mother treated her safety with special trepidation, as she was her first long-awaited child, and her parents themselves called her birth a miracle. However, on that day, the woman decided that nothing terrible would happen to her. The store was only a few hundred meters from the house, and the girls planned to get there on scooters. Michaela ran home to Katrina. They wanted to take two identical scooters, so a friend took hers and asked her brother to lend them a second one of the same kind. The girls drove to the store and left their scooters near the building, after which they went inside to do some shopping. When they went outside, the girls started chatting and completely forgot about their scooters. They headed towards the house on foot, but quickly remembered about them. Upon returning to where they left them, the girls discovered that Michaela's scooter was missing. Thinking that someone had moved it, the girls decided to go around the store from different sides. Michaela walked along the parking lot and quickly spotted a scooter. He was standing next to a car parked a few meters from the building. The girl headed towards him, but a few seconds later, Katrina heard a piercing scream. Running back, she saw a man grab Michaela and throw her into a car, next to which there was a scooter. After that, he quickly returned to the driver's seat and sped away. Shocked, Katrina ran into the store and told the saleswoman what had happened. She immediately called the police, and officers arrived at the scene. After the police, the store employee also called Michaela's father, since they knew each other, and reported what had happened. Together with Katrina's father, they immediately rushed to the store, where investigators were already present at that time. The man also told his wife to stay home near the phone in case the police called. The detectives immediately faced a number of problems. There was not a single surveillance camera near the store, and the only witness to the abduction was Katrina. The girl was in deep shock and could barely speak, so her father was allowed to take her home. The officers then spoke with the store cashier, and that's where their first lead was waiting. The woman said that shortly before the abduction, a suspicious man was walking in front of her establishment. He parked and got out of the car, but never entered the store. Instead, he walked along the building, looking into the windows and watching the girls. The cashier then thought he was going to rob her. According to her description, he was a white man, about 30 years old, with a large mustache. He arrived in an old burgundy car, but the woman did not see the model and number. Based on her testimony, the police compiled a sketch of the kidnapper and sent it to all newspapers and television channels. From the first hours, information about this case spread throughout the city and beyond. People were shocked that someone could kidnap a girl right outside a store, in a crowded part of the city. The portrait and description of the car were also sent to hundreds of patrol officers throughout the area, and they began to stop all similar cars, hoping to find a girl alive. Meanwhile, detectives handed the scooter over to forensic experts for examination. In their opinion, the kidnappers saw Michaela and Katrina approach the store and decided to specifically drag one of the scooters straight to the back door of his car in order to kidnap the girl. Thus, his fingerprints could have remained on it, and forensic scientists quickly confirmed this version. They did find a print that didn't match anyone in Katrina's family, and also clearly didn't belong to the 9-year-old girl. But there was one problem: the print was partial. The experts were only able to remove about 10% of the full print, which made their task significantly more difficult. In those years, this was not enough to conduct database searches, and police could only hope for direct comparisons with suspects. By the evening of that day, the FBI became involved in the case. Michaela's parents were shocked and depressed, and her mother blamed herself for what happened. She also remembered one extremely disturbing fact that made her feel uneasy. Just a week before Michaela disappeared, the woman woke up in the early morning and went down to the kitchen, where she saw her daughter at the dining table. It was very strange, since the girl had never woken up so early. The woman asked why she was not sleeping. Michaela replied that she was writing a poem, but she was very sleepy and did not elaborate. After a few questions from her mom, she said she woke up to noises in the attic and got the idea to write a poem about people being kidnapped and locked in attics. The girl clarified that the poem is dedicated specifically to those who are kept alive and not killed. Then her mother was very surprised to hear this from her 9-year-old daughter. But after the abduction, it all seemed like something not just creepy, but also mystical. For herself, the woman came to the conclusion that Michaela, without knowing it, predicted her own fate. For 2 days after the abduction, the police made every effort to comb the city in an attempt to locate the suspect or his car. But this did not bring any results, and they remembered Katrina. They took almost no testimony from the girl, given her state of shock. But after 2 days of searching, they decided that the time had come and went to her home. And here the investigators were in for a very unpleasant turn of events. The girl, who saw the moment of the abduction, and the criminal himself, gave them a completely different description of his appearance. Based on her words, it turned out that he was a man about 20 years old with long, blonde and dirty shoulder-length hair, as well as acne all over his face. The girl added that he had blue eyes, which seemed to her like the eyes of a fox. Katrina also remembered some features of the car. It was a beige sedan, with straight shapes and many dents. The police immediately realized that the cashier had given them a description of a completely different man, due to the fact that he was acting suspiciously outside the store. She thought that this man was behind the kidnapping. However, Katrina, who actually saw the criminal, became a completely different man and a car. This became a serious problem for the investigator. They sent the wrong sketch of the suspect to all the media and gave it to the patrol officers, which is why they were all looking for a completely different person. All this happened in the first 48 hours after the abduction, the most important time during which there is the greatest chance of quickly solving the case. Based on the girl's description, they immediately compiled a new composite photo and again sent it out everywhere. In addition, the police decided to bypass all men who lived in this area and had a criminal record for a crime of a sexual nature. Dozens of volunteers also got involved in the case, going door to door and asking residents in the hope that one of them would recognize the kidnapper or provide some other information. They also posted thousands of leaflets with a photograph of the girl and a description of what happened. In the first days alone, 49,000 of these leaflets were distributed. A few days later, they received their first interesting tip. They were contacted by 3 people who were hiking in a huge and national park near their city. At some point, experienced travelers noticed footprints on the ground and realized that one pair belonged to an adult and the second to a child. Following them, they found a blanket and empty fast food packaging in the middle of the forest. The police admitted that the tracks could belong to Michaela and her kidnapper. The psychological profile compiled by the FBI expert also suggested that the criminal would most likely take his victim to a place as far away from civilization as possible, given the size of the park and its proximity to the city. This place fit perfectly with such a theory. Detectives decided to search the park, using all available resources. They combed the area on the ground while helicopters with thermal imagers studied the area from the air. But all this did not bring any results. They were unable to find the girl herself, any evidence. The police continued to search other parks, mountains, and other remote locations, but all this led them to a dead end. At the same time, there was a huge number of leads due to the fact that this case was actively covered throughout the country. In the first month of the investigation alone, about 4,000 leads were received. Investigators tried to check each of them, which was extremely problematic. This case was especially actively discussed among residents of neighboring San Francisco and nearby cities. Also, famous athletes recorded an appeal to the public, in which they asked to share any information about the case with the police. Soon, a hefty $70,000 bounty was offered, and Michaela's photo appeared on 1 million packages of milk across the state. Despite such broad public involvement, detectives couldn't get any closer to solving the mystery. At the end of December, after a month and a half of searching, the police admitted that the only progress made was a few thousand verified leads. Since then, the situation has not changed for many months. The police continued to receive numerous leads and were investigating them. Even the girl's mother conducted her own investigation, studying similar cases and trying to understand who could have kidnapped her daughter. They all hoped that the girl was still alive and that the perpetrator was holding her somewhere. In 1991, detectives began to take a closer look at 43-year-old Timothy Binder, and what more they studied this man, the more terrible the picture opened up before them. The man came to the attention of the police even before Michaela's abduction. They became interested in him after he began to send various gifts, letters, and money to dozens of little girls. Among the letters were Bible clippings, one of which underlined the phrases, "I chose you and be with me." The parents of some of them went to the police, who questioned Binder. He stated that he only wanted to be friends with these girls because he believed they were lonely. An audit revealed that in 1985 he was fired from Social Security Services in Colorado for collecting the girls' addresses and other personal information. It was to them that he later sent gifts, money, and letters. Police searched his van, which contained many photos of children and Bible clippings. They also found out that the man had already been arrested for trying to take the 2 girls to his van, but no charges were forthcoming. In addition to all this, Binder often visited the graves of girls in cemeteries and spent a lot of time next to them. But then even more disturbing facts came to light. 6 months before Michaela's abduction, 7-year-old Amber disappeared near her city. Rather, after that, Binder contacted the girl's mother, offered his help, and regularly visited her home. He also wrote a letter to the police saying that he believed the next missing girl would be 9 years old. Just a few months later, Michaela, who was also 9 years old, was kidnapped. After her disappearance, Binder called the girl's mother many times, came to her home and offered his help. But that's not all. In early December 1st, 1988, he sent a Christmas card to an FBI profiler, who had many conversations with him. The postcard showed a girl who showed 4 fingers, and a few weeks later, a 4-year-old girl disappeared in the city. Despite the fact that this whole chain of horrific facts belonged to the category of circumstantial evidence, detectives obtained a warrant to search his home, where he lived with his wife. However, they were unable to find any clues that could link the man to any kidnappings. When information about Binder's suspicious behavior leaked to the newspapers, people began to believe that he was a serial killer. The man and his family were harassed and assaulted, after which he sued the city authorities for misinformation and won the case. The police studied him for several more months, but eventually came to the conclusion that the man could not be linked to one crime. Some detectives believed that he was not at all dangerous to children, and his strange behavior was not connected to all these crimes. Therefore, in the end, the police focused on finding other suspects. A new serious lead appeared only in December 1992, 4 years after Michaela's disappearance. An inmate from Indiana, who was serving an 11-year sentence for robbery, contacted police and said he knew the identity of the girl's kidnapper. According to him, he helped him bury her body in the very park where the footprints were found. Investigators did not show much interest in this tip. The prisoner then wrote a letter to one of San Francisco's leading newspapers. When his story was highlighted, a wave of criticism fell on the police. Under public pressure, they finally decided to talk to the prisoner, and he promised them not only to point out the place of Michaela's burial, but also to take them straight to the murderer. He was transferred to California, and together with the police, the man went to comb the area. According to him, the body was procured from a gladiolus field, and the officers focused all their efforts on studying the area. The search lasted for 8 hours, until the prisoner suddenly admitted that he had made up his story. He explained that he wanted to give Michaela's family some comfort and the opportunity to move on. Instead, the girl's relatives and police officers were furious. For this lie, the prisoner was sentenced to another 6.5 years in prison, increasing his total sentence to almost 2 decades. In addition, he was ordered to pay compensation to Michaela's family in the amount of $6,000. The next suspect appeared in August 2000. Police arrested a man named Curtis Anderson, who was suspected of murdering a 7-year-old girl a year earlier. He pleaded guilty and went to jail, but detectives did not rule out that other girls died at his hands. There was no confirmation of this theory for 7 years, until Curtis contacted the FBI. The man suffered from serious health problems and said that before he dies, he wants to confess to other crimes. According to his account, he killed 13 other girls and women, one of whom was the same 7-year-old Emperor, who disappeared 6 months before Michaela. He provided them with enough precise details for investigators to conclude that he was indeed involved. However, it was still impossible to prove his guilt, as detectives did not obtain any physical evidence, nor were they able to find the victim's body. As for Michaela, the man denied any involvement. Although in those years he drove a car that fit the description according to Katrina, FBI agents planned to interrogate him further, but Curtis died. The next suspect appeared in 2012. The police were contacted by a prisoner who shared interesting information. He stated that his interlocutor, Lauren Herzig, was very similar to the sketch of the suspect in the Michaela case. Detectives were intrigued because Laurent and his partner were serving time for murders they had committed together. They were suspected of killing 19 people, but investigators were only able to prove some episodes. A month before his partners contacted the police, Laurent committed suicide in a prison cell, but the police still decided to check his involvement. The photo of the man in his youth did look like a sketch, but the detectives needed additional evidence. They decided to dig up the well in which Laurent and his partner dumped the bodies of their victims. In the end, they managed to extract several thousand pieces of bones, after which medical experts began to study them. In the course of grueling work, they determined that the bones belonged to 5 different girls. However, none of them matched Michaela's DNA. After examining several more wells, the police again found no evidence and could not prove Laurent's involvement. The next lead appeared in 2018, when a man named David Meach was charged with the murder of 2 girls that took place in 1986 near the city of Michaela. The suspect was found thanks to modern technologies in the study of DNA. After the murder, biological material was found under the fingernails of the victims, But it was not possible to study it in those years. It is only in modern times that modern analysis has been carried out. The man himself was already in prison for the murder of his 39-year-old girlfriend in 1989. After the new accusations, the detectives decided to check him for involvement in Michaela's DNA. And here something interesting awaited them. They were able to find out that at the time of her abduction, David was in the same area. He also fit the description of Katrina and owned a similar car. Given that his fingerprints were in the database, the experts decided to re-examine the prints with Katrina's scooters. Despite the fact that it was only 10% of the full print, with the help of modern technology, they were able to make a long-awaited breakthrough in this matter. They determined that the print from the scooter was completely identical to Micha's. In 2020, the man was charged with the murder of Michaela, as no one believed she was alive anymore. He refused to plead guilty, and the case went to court. In early 2023, a preliminary hearing was held, in which the judge concluded that there was enough evidence against Mich to start the trial. His lawyer tried to dispute the evidence, saying that the print on the scooter did not implicate his client in the murder. However, in this particular situation, it was a very dubious statement. It was obvious that the kidnapper had deliberately placed the scooter next to the back door of his car to grab the girl when she approached him. The lawyer also tried to dispute the murder charge, as the girl's body was never found, which means there is no evidence of her death. This statement is also not relevant these days. In addition, Mich has clearly demonstrated a predisposition to commit serious crimes throughout his life. At the age of 16, he broke into someone else's house and abused a woman there, threatening her with a knife. After a year in prison, he was released early, and shortly after his release, he again tried to abuse another woman. After spending 2 years in prison, he was released again on parole. In May 1988, 7 months before Michaela's abduction, the man was arrested for robbing a store. He was sentenced to a year in prison, but as you might have guessed, the man was once again released early. A month before Michaela's abduction, the girl's father came from out of state to attend a press conference announcing the arrest of his daughter's kidnappers. Michaela's mother, who had been hoping to find her alive for decades, couldn't come out of it that she was battling cancer at the time. Shortly after the news of her arrest, the woman died, thanking investigators for getting to the truth at the end of her life. Police also said they would continue to search for Michaela's body and offered a $10,000 reward for any useful information. Mich's trial is due to begin soon and will involve 3 cases at once: Michaela and 2 girls who were found to have his DNA under their fingernails. At first, the prosecution planned to seek the death penalty, but then the district attorney changed, and a new employee named Pamela Price changed her mind. Now, if Mich is found guilty of all 3 murders, he won't even get a life sentence, but only several decades in prison. This decision caused outrage among the relatives of the victims and caused a resonance in the media. And the only one who supported it was Mich's lawyer. However, at the moment, the man is already 62 years old, and even before the end of such a line, he does not have much chance.